I'm gonna give them everything I didn't have. You don't do that. That's the dumbest thing ever.
Yes, ma'am.
You get up and you go to work. When my brother Jesse wanted a car, my mother said, "Good for you, and you're gonna get a job." I'm not gonna give you the whole conversation because you'll know she's absolutely nuts. But she said, "No, no, no. You want a car? You know what your father did when he got a car? He became a waiter. How about that?"
2 minutes.
So, all right. So you guys, Dylan, are you on Facebook now, hon? Chapearl, can you hear me on Facebook?
Let me
Linear
check and
Bob,
tell you.
Linda, Daphne. Hey, sweetie. Yeah, Barbara Jean. My parents are hilarious. Carol, how you doing, sweetie? And so I'm gonna let you. Oh, okay, you're gonna check for me, Marnie.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good show.
Thank
Have
you,
a good show.
Pastor
Have
Thurston.
have a great show.
Thank
It
you.
sounds clear on Facebook.
Perfect, Pastor Thurston.
Yes.
We're gonna start the conversation on on reparations at 7.
Okay. Cool.
But what I'm going to do now at 6:30 is talk about gun control, given the developments last night in Boulder. If you want to talk about that, or if you
Okay.
want me to call, let me. Do you want me to call you back at 7, or do you want to?
Yeah. You can call me back at 7.
Okay, perfect.
I'll be prepared for the reparations in
Okay,
my moment.
and oh, I know you will be. How about that?
Moving and eating better every day
Okay,
can
so
help make you
everybody,
and your
thank
kids
you so
healthier.
much.
Search
Hey,
We Can
Daphne,
online to
I did
find
a
out
great
more.
job.
A
Just a
message
little
from
bit
the
loud.
Ad
It's a
Council,
little too
HHS,
high.
and
No, it should be louder. And could you bring Pastor Thurston up?
No, I have to add in
Okay,
commercials right
very
now.
good. Reverend Thurston.
He dropped off the line somehow, so I'm gonna have to call him back.
Okay, please
Like he
do.
dropped off the line, so I'm gonna.
I'm also going to give him the call-in numbers.
Okay, I'm gonna call him back when I play your
Okay.
intro.
Is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. It is a joy to be with you this morning on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, sending all my love to all my brothers and sisters up there. And thank you, all of my morning stars, for meeting me on Facebook and on YouTube. I need all of my brothers and sisters on Facebook, the Morning Stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. I love you all so much. Please meet me on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, but also like and subscribe on my new YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson channel. We're going to be developing some little programming and podcast and things that we're going to be putting over there. But right now, I need you all to help me to boost the listeners, the viewership, if you will. So please do that. Call me or text me at 773 9278 773 763 WCPT. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text me there. And I want to see what you're saying. I want to hear what you're saying. I want you to meet the morning stars over here. We've got a lot to talk about. There was a shooting in Boulder last night I was going to be talking about, and we're going to talk about jail time. In Arkansas, you can go to jail for unpaid rent. Yeah. But we're going to talk about Arkansas. We're going to talk about what's happening in Arkansas. They're trying to repeal that bill, but it's interesting that that would get put on the books and that it would be allowed to stand. But we're also going to be talking about what happened in Boulder and what happened in Colorado. I mean, we just had a mass shooting in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area. So, what's going on with the mass shootings? Is this a response to COVID or to coming out of the lockdowns? Or is this about COVID itself? This gentleman went directly to the COVID vaccine line and shot someone there. It's no, we've got to find out what happened there, but it's being investigated, and it's going to take some time to find out what happened in Boulder. But of course, our love and prayers go out to our brothers and sisters in Boulder, Colorado, because that is so unsettling. 10 people were killed. 10 people were killed. We're going to dedicate the show today to the iconic Elgin Baylor, someone from, uh, if you ever see Dr. J, if you see Michael Jordan, if you see Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, all of these greats, the Godfather, Elgin Baylor. Every NBA highlight you see on ESPN every day was invented by him. According to this Washington Post report, not some of them, all of them. He died yesterday at the age of 86, retired almost 50 years ago. But he was just an icon. He was an icon. And so we thank God for him. And, the triple pump in the lane, the finger roll, all of that. That's Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor. Thinking about him today. Of course, today we're going to have a high of 62 degrees in Chicago, and it's going to rain. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 59 degrees. It will rain. The Dow closed down 234 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed down 99 points. The S&P 500 closed down 2 points. Thank you, Dylan, for getting me to these headlines. Sadly, 10 people were killed in Boulder, Colorado at a supermarket in a shooting. A shooting at this Colorado supermarket killed 10 people yesterday, including a police officer who was a father of 7 children, everybody. He was the first to respond to the scene. The police arrested the suspect but didn't reveal his name or any details about the shooting at an evening news conference where the Boulder police chief, Maris Harrell, fought back tears. Investigators had just begun sorting through evidence and witness interviews, and didn't have details on the motive for the shooting at the supermarket. It's about 25 miles from Denver, but we will be keeping you informed on WCPT. Keep it locked right here for Stephanie Miller and Tom Hartman and Joni Esposito. They will be giving you more and more details every day. Uh, the CDC director says that the U.S. could see an unavoidable surge of COVID-19 cases as states loosen restrictions. Rochelle Walensky, who's the director of the CDC, said Monday she's concerned that the U.S. could experience another unavoidable surge in coronavirus infections due to new variants if people don't follow mitigation measures like mask wearing and social distancing. Even though 1 out of 8 Americans have been partially vaccinated and nearly 1/4 have been fully vaccinated, whether you've been vaccinated or not, you need to be physically distant, and you also need to wash your hands, and you need to wear your masks, everybody. The AstraZeneca trial has been called incomplete. The British-Swedish pharmaceutical firm AstraZeneca may have only used partial data when it announced the details from a U.S. trial of its coronavirus vaccine, according to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases on Tuesday. This was a very, very strong and unusual rebuke. So what's going to happen with AstraZeneca as we're seeing them paused all throughout the country? We're going to ask Dr. Deborah Holden about that very, very shortly. President Biden, his administration has expelled just 13% of migrant families in the past week. They kept up a Trump-era policy known as Title 42 as a tool to quickly turn back adults and families who illegally cross the southern border. But new Department of Homeland Security data leaked to Axios shows in recent days it's hardly been used for families. The data shows an average of just 13% of nearly 13,000 family members attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border were returned to Mexico between March 14th and 21st using the public health order, which essentially says the U.S. can close the border to non-essential travel because of the pandemic. Evanston, Illinois, we'll be talking about this a little bit later on today. Reparations, what do you think about it? Spread the word. We're going to be talking about that today, everybody. Is leading the country with the first reparations program for Black residents. Is it enough? Is it right? What should reparations look like? We're going to get into that today. The Derek Chauvin trial, the man accused of killing George Floyd. Well, his jury selection is nearing completion ahead of next week's opening statements. Yes, it's that time. It's also almost been a year, everybody. Jury selection will resume today in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, charged in the death of George Floyd. And that wraps it up for our headlines. We've got this brilliant pastor, the teaching pastor from the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope, the author of Mirror Moments, Pastor Stephen Thurston. Junior, how you doing with us today?
I'm doing amazing, Santita. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Always a joy, always a joy. Talk to me. I need some good news. Oh, do I need it?
I got them for you. I think the best news that I could share with you is that you ought to love yourself.
Hmm.
And I think that if we start shifting our mindset to be more intentional about loving ourselves, we would see a lot of stress and issues, friction even between people of different races, different genders, different perspectives begin to dissipate. And it's funny and it's interesting for many people that the concept of self-love conjures up images of tree-hugging hippies or stacks of self-help books or a series of TED Talks on the subject. But before somebody dismisses this whole self-love concept as some euphoric pie-in-the-sky idea, I want us to recognize the significance of this concept for our emotional and psychological health and well-being, because there are some studies that exist that attest to the fact that self-love and compassion are key for minimizing anxiety and keeping depression at bay. And as we move towards embracing the concept of self-love, we move closer to accepting ourselves and treating ourselves with kindness and respect as we nurture our growth and our well-being. So self-love not only encompasses how we treat ourselves, but also our thoughts and our feelings about ourselves. Without a sufficient supply of self-love, we're more likely to be highly self-critical, fall into people-pleasing and perfectionism, tolerate abuse, neglect our own needs, and engage in self-sabotage, making decisions that ultimately aren't in our best interest. And so somebody's listening in and they're like, well, Stephen, what's keeping me from truly loving myself? I thought I loved myself until you started talking, Stephen. Listen, that's a great question that you asked. Glad you asked it. Let me give us three barriers that I just alluded to. That let me come back and highlight them that can often keep us from engaging fully in loving ourselves. Number one, people pleasing, believing that you have to keep everyone in your life happy. That's going to lead you to a set of codependent shackles that will weigh you down and cause you to forfeit your happiness. Stop trying to be all things to all people. That's God's responsibility, not yours. Number two, this whole construct of normal versus weird. Santita, we talked about this in our personal private conversations. Because there are people out there that label you and I as weird. But we have enough self-love to recognize, no, normal comes in various shades, various sizes. There's really no such thing as normal. There's not one definition that we all need to fit ourselves into. And the sooner we get this, the freer that we're going to be able to love ourselves and be our authentic selves. And then number three, perfectionism. So many of us have set an immeasurably high standard for ourselves, or we're trying to live up to a standard that was set for us by somebody else, in many cases, a family member. And we weren't built to handle the pressure of being perfect, and yet we try, and we exhaust ourselves in the process, and we tear ourselves up in the process, and we lead ourselves into depression in the process. Nobody's going to be perfect. Just be the best that you can be. Listen, we've got to find a new way of talking to ourselves and thinking about ourselves if we're going to cultivate authentic love for ourselves. You don't have to change everything about your life. Just try to treat yourself better than you did yesterday. And then tomorrow, try to treat yourself better than you did today. Self-love isn't about becoming a narcissist or putting yourself on a pedestal above other people. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not about showing how great you are to everybody else. Neither is self-love selfish. Let me say that again. Neither is self-love selfish. It doesn't prevent you from caring about other people. It simply means you give yourself the same kindness, grace, care, and compassion that you give to everybody else around you. So here's the question. I'm giving homework today, Santita. What's one loving thing that you can do for yourself today? I need everybody to think about that. Not just think about it. I need you to write it down and then write down when you're going to do it. I got to give you a due date. About what time today are you going to do something loving for yourself? And the more loving thoughts and actions that you add to your daily life, the better you're able to crowd out the self-defeating thoughts and behaviors that are really keeping you from loving yourself. So many of our thoughts on a daily basis are negative thoughts juxtaposed to positive thoughts. And so these loving thoughts and these loving acts that we do towards ourselves help us to combat that and balance that scale. And with practice, self-love can become second nature to all of us. Remember, you're worthy of the same love that you so freely give to people that you know and even strangers that you don't know. So everybody, go love yourself today and begin to proclaim, I love me.
Mm, I love that. I needed to hear that today. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes,
Mirror Moments, everybody. That's the book that you need to get. He's the author. You need to get that. We need to take the time to look at ourselves and to love
definitely.
ourselves. It's okay. It's okay. In fact, it's mandatory. You can't love anyone else unless you love yourself. Think about that,
Do you love
everybody.
yourself? Yeah.
Oh, Pastor Stephen Thurston, Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. Oh, brilliant, brilliant pastor and author. Mirror Moments. Get the book, everybody. Let's get to Dr. Deborah Furr Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. We've been talking about these vaccines. We've been talking about health. You've got to get involved in her campaign, Mandate Equity. Mandate Equity. People need equal access to these vaccines. One of the drivers against that is poverty. But we're seeing something with AstraZeneca before we get into that. Dr. Deborah Furr Holden. What is going on? They got a strong rebuke from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Uh, they were told that it turns out that they gave incomplete information in the trials. What
Well,
happened
uh,
here?
well, first of all, good morning.
Yes, yes.
Um, and what it is this is the system working. Okay, so I want people to see that as a good thing. So they say the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. That's Dr. Fauci's institute, and that is the institute that has a data safety and monitoring board, as many institutes do, many institutions do. I have a data safety and monitoring board for my center. This is a panel of independent experts who review your data, they review your findings, they make sure that and they do them for all types of interventions. But when we're talking about a medical intervention specifically, the bar is really, really high, right? And so the Data Safety and Monitoring Board, or the DSMB, did exactly what they should do. They're vetting all of the data. They're making sure that everything makes sense, that they haven't missed anything. They review every single what's called adverse event. Even if, let's say, somebody is in a trial and dies, gets hit by a car, that has to get reported because death obviously is a serious adverse event. They have to review every adverse event that happens during that trial, right? Even if it's unrelated to the medication itself, because you don't know. And so all of this stuff has to be reported. That's what I was trying to tell people, like when we were talking about the safety of the other vaccines. You know, most vaccines, if you were going to have a negative side effect, you would see that right away. In very, 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 very rare circumstances will you not see a side effect from a medication or a vaccine until years down the road. So nobody can provide that because we're not years down the road with this virus yet. We're not years down the road with the vaccine for it. But what we are seeing is our system working well and the way that it should. So when they say that it was incomplete, they started reporting out numbers that they were like trying to substantiate with the data. And typically people and companies shouldn't report that stuff until it's gotten the seal of approval from the Data Safety and Monitoring Board, because that is going to be the ultimate efficacy number that should go public. So AstraZeneca, I think, jumped the gun a little bit, came out a little too early and started, touting around 79% before they got the seal of approval from the Data Safety Monitoring Board. And the Data Safety Monitoring Board does not care about any of that stuff. They don't care about what AstraZeneca said. They don't care about their reputation. They have one job, and that is to make sure that that data pans out, jives, everything is as it should be, and that they can with confidence say, yes, this is ready to go out into the public. And they're still in that process. So that's it's a good thing. Shame on AstraZeneca because they shouldn't have opened their mouths and started talking about efficacy until that process, not in the U.S., until that process was complete. But they're going to learn today. That's for sure.
Well, no, that's a good thing because people need to know that. What are we? Um, what does it mean to have nearly 1 in 8 Americans having received this shot? What does that mean? And nearly 1 in 4 have been fully have gotten their both of their doses, or they've gotten the single dose shot. What does that mean? Are we on track for something for herd immunity or not?
I think, well, that's hard to say because it implies that everything stays as it is and continues to move in the same direction, right? So one, we got to we've got to continue to keep supply up, and we've had some supply issues. You've got a lot of places who said I can vaccinate way more people, but I don't have the supply, and it won't take very much. All it'll take is for one of these vaccines to come off of the market, and it will shift the whole supply chain. And so it's possible we can get there. But when you have things like what's happening with AstraZeneca, when you have you know some of the things like what's happening with Moderna, I'm not real sure about all the intricacies of this lawsuit, but we still do have to stay the post because I believe that the numbers are still about 30%, 25-30% of the population remain a no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, likely that number will improve, and I say improve, that number will go down because improve implies one is better than the other. Let's just say that number will likely go down as more people get vaccinated because, for the people who are just a hard no, that is what it is. But for the people who are kind of like, I'm just going to wait and see, by the, middle of summer, in the summer, the same way we all at some point started to know people who had contracted COVID. Well, everybody knows people now who've gotten the vaccine. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. And it's so many people have gotten the vaccine now. Most people know somebody well who's gotten the vaccine. It's not somebody that's distant or far away. When you start getting to the point where you got 10, 12, 15, 16% of a population, which is what the numbers are looking like across the country, right? Varies city by city and state by state. People. If something affects 10 or 15% of people, somebody because more than 10 or 15 people. So out of every 10 people, one person that will likely have been vaccinated. Yeah, I think we'll start to see those things turn.
Yeah, because I know people who have gotten the vaccine, and I know people who are waiting to get the vaccine, and I know people who are saying, I absolutely will not get the vaccine. So people kind of fall into three different baskets. Tomorrow I want to talk with you about what being an asymptomatic carrier means, because it seems to just very quickly, I've got less than a minute, really 30 seconds. This vaccine mitigates the virus. It doesn't kill it. It stops you from being killed by it. Does it make you asymptomatic? Because you can still get it, you can still transmit it.
It is, but it greatly reduces the risk for both.
Okay.
It greatly reduces the risk that if you are exposed, that you will actually contract the disease. Because your body has this really awesome immune response that can fight it off before it really has a chance to take hold. Right? So it does greatly reduce that risk. And it also reduces the risk, therefore, that you will spread it. If it sanitized your airway, it would even elevate. When we see an intranasal version of the vaccine come out, like we have with flu, you'll see even elevated numbers as far as it preventing spread. But it still by and large is a great thing. It's a great thing, and it does reduce the risk that you'll even contract the virus.
Dr. Deborah Holden, everybody, world-renowned epidemiologist, every day here on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about what happened in Boulder. Let's talk about jail time for those people who have unpaid rent. What do you think about that? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on 820 AM. WCPT Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. If you need help with your bill, call ComEd at 800 Edison 1.
This is Jim Allen, president of the Brooklyn Craft Farmers, and this is my story.
Okay, you don't have to bring it all the way down. I still need to hear it in the background to make sure we haven't lost the connection.
Okay, I will have to turn on and off though, because that's what creates the feedback loop that yeah.
Okay, well, let me speak with Dr. Verholden before she goes. Deborah?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I've seen a few interviews. I saw a really intriguing interview. I'm going to send it to you, but I could not send anything from my phone last night.
This story sounds familiar.
It's like my Gmail's not working, but I'm not happy that this happened to her, but Marnie's having the same problem. It kept kicking you out of Gmail. And when I try to send things from Gmail to my from my text, you know, you can text into your Gmail. I couldn't touch my email all night long. Not one account. Unless I went on my computer, and I was on my computer for like 16 hours yesterday.
You are listening to WCPT 820.
Just needed a break.
Well, yeah, 16 hours, you know, this, you can get a little fried here. But anyway, but
It's a lot of screen time.
It's a lot of screen time, girl. It really is a lot.
Yeah.
But I need to, there's some things I want to talk with you about this, because I saw a couple of fascinating interviews yesterday. One of which was with Dr. Fauci, with a gentleman who said, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. And he was very respectful. But there were some poignant questions that he asked, and pointed questions, and you could see Dr. Fauci was a little thrown, that they were very specific, and it might have even made him a little uncomfortable. But this gentleman is from the Latinx community. He's a very prominent actor and producer. And you know, because there is not just hesitancy, there are questions. You know, when you look at what happened in Colorado yesterday, tragically, it's not as simple. There's a lot of stuff going on with people. You know, and I spoke with Dwight McKee, and he said, you know, it's like collectively the country's having a nervous breakdown. There's a lot going on.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. You saw the CEO of Texas Roadhouse
killed
his
himself.
own life.
You know, I wanted to talk with you about that, because they said he had COVID, and it was just such a painful experience. And I think people need to hear about that. You know, just I would like.
Well, and then the other thing we have, the rates of depression and anxiety are through the roof in the U.S. The CDC just released, the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC did two different studies. One of parents and one of adults. And parents are reporting a lot more mental health symptoms for their children, and adults are self-reporting a lot more mental health symptoms for themselves.
I'm about to go crazy. Pastor Thurston and I are going out to lunch today.
This is a great time.
I can't take it anymore, Deborah.
That's the thing you're going to do for yourself? Is that, listen, yesterday
what you did?
I was going stir crazy, and you know, my co-grandma, that's what we call ourselves, co-grandmas, called to check on my daughter.
30 seconds.
And, you know, going through it. You know, she's just having a tough pregnancy. But
what happened now?
We went out to dinner.
You all gonna
and it was fantastic.
You all are gonna be messes. I mean, I hope they get a chance to be with their child. You all are kidnappers. I know what's gonna happen here. Do we have our guest on?
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Santita Jackson, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. Hey, the voice of progressive Minnesota up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Amy Klobuchar and Ilhan Omar and Gary Hines of Sounds of Blackness and so many great people up there in Minneapolis and Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hey, everybody, let's talk about. I have a couple of things I want to throw at you before we talk about reparations at the top of the hour. I want to discuss with you what happened in Boulder last night. Yesterday. What's going on in Colorado? You know, you Columbine, you had Aurora, had a lot going on. But we've had two mass shootings within the past week in the United States as we're beginning to open up. And as Dr. Deborah Furr Holden and I were just discussing, there's a lot of depression. A lot of depression. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. A lot is going on with people. A lot is going on. All at one time and all over the world, quite frankly. But let's look at the United States right now. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. And when people are fearful, when people feel disempowered, not so good things happen to everybody. So I want you to call me or text me about gun laws. Do we need tougher gun laws? Do we need to enforce the gun laws that we have? What needs to happen? And what about jail time? Jail time for those persons who have not paid their rent. A lot of people are not able to pay their rent. They're not. In Arkansas, unpaid rent can send you to jail. What do you think about that, Linear Bob and Daphne McDonald and Barbara Jean and Carol Saskin out there in Beverly Hills and Hannah Parker and Shirley Carter from Philadelphia and Wanda. Hey, Miss Wanda down there in North Carolina with Mr. Corey. You know we love you. That's my mom's neighbor out there, out there in Washington D.C. My parents have a home there, and then, of course, North Carolina is where I was born. Love that. Tyrone Lane, Keith Fluid, my singing buddy up there in New York. Great, great singer. Sang Happy Birthday. We love you. Marquet and Louise and everybody. So we've got attorney Robert Patillo and attorney C.K. Hoffler to talk with us about this melange of issues this morning. So much is happening. Attorney C.K. Hoffler and attorney Robert Patillo. When I go to bed, I go to bed with one show and I wake up, I'm up at 2 o'clock. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I mean, this news cycle, I can just throw all my papers up in the air. But just very quickly, before we go into jail time, for those people who are not able to pay their rent or who don't pay their rent, but more than likely it's people who are not able to pay the rent. What do you make of what happened in Boulder yesterday? In the context of what you saw in Atlanta last week, in the context of Columbine and Aurora in past years in Colorado. Let me start with you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Give me your elevator pitch on that.
Well, I think, as Dr. Deborah Verholden and you were discussing, this country is in deep, deep, deep pain. I've said for a while we're going through, and I'm not a clinician, not a medical person, we're going through some form of PTSD. People reacting to COVID, reacting to so many other things. You have to remember we were in 4 years, we lived through the Trump administration in 4 years. That caused a certain dynamic to explode in this country, which resulted in the January 6th, to me, events and other events. So Americans are in a very, very bad place. These shootings, and this is not the first time we've had these shootings, but these shootings are merely a ramification of people who feel, I think, emboldened to just express themselves and kill people. They just, and feeling that either there are no restrictions, no one's, that they're not going to get caught, or if they get caught, they won't suffer the consequences that others would suffer, or that they just don't care. They just don't care. This is how they feel. They want to kill, and they're doing it. And because it's so easy to get guns in this country, literally, the guy who shot and killed 8 people in the Atlanta metropolitan area, he got the gun the same day and went on that killing spree and would have continued but for being turned in. So it's gun control. We have gun control issues. We have this PTSD or helplessness or depression that people are experiencing. And then we have just frankly bad people who want to do bad things and kill people and feel that they can do this with reckless abandon without being held to pay for it. where the consequences won't be as severe for them as they might be for other people. So I think it's a combination. It's unfortunate, it's awful, but that's where we are today in this country.
And that's about as far as we can go with it, Robert Patillo, because there are a lot of details that we don't have. We do know one gentleman was, because this is a grocery store, but they were also giving out, they were dispensing COVID-19 shots. And so he walked up to people in that line and shot someone. This man said he shot the person in front of me. Wow. What do you make of this very quickly before we talk about jail time? And I get to you, Brian, and all the other callers, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. What do you make about, what happened yesterday in Boulder?
Well, it's always interesting to me the fact that we individualized white killers. And that whenever one of these white killers goes on these shooting sprees, we go into the media, the police, go into this deep philosophical searching idea of what do we need to do to stop these individuals. Now, somebody in Chicago killed 10 people. That was just a Negro who lost Negro out there doing his thing and arrest him and move on. If it's a Latino in L.A. Who goes on a shooting spree or drive-by spree, that's just some Latino out there killing people. So there's no need to do these deep searching vision quests to find out what has to happen in America. The reason we know why these crazed white men are going on these shooting sprees is the same reason they've been going on these shooting sprees for the last couple hundred years, because they get filled up with this idea and concept of them losing their power. They get filled up with these lies and ideas that, there's a conspiracy where Democrats have a pizza parlor where they have a secret pedophile ring, and therefore you need to go there with your gun to protect them. You're losing your capital. They're stealing the election from you. They're stopping you from what you're supposed to have, so you can take your gun to the Capitol. When you're in high school, the girls aren't paying attention to you. They're not giving you the love and affection and admiration that you want, so you got to take your gun to the high school. Over at the elementary school, they're being mean to you, and some of the kids picked on you, so you can go shoot up the school, so on and so forth. We have to start. We talk about regulating the guns, but not regulating these crazy white men who continue to do the killing. Because what we've seen is if you take the guns away from them completely, they'll drive a truck into a group. If you take the trucks away from them, they'll throw a Molotov cocktail into an elementary school. If you take those away from them, they'll get a stick and start stabbing people. As long as you don't regulate the people doing the crime, as long as you don't figure out ways to stop this entire class of angry, disaffected white men who believe the best way for them to achieve their goals in life is simply to go on a nihilistic killing spree, that is what we have to focus on. So instead of finding out how do we stop their instrumentation terror, how do we stop these individuals from being radicalized, being filled with this self-pity, self-hate, and believe that they have the right to do so? Because this is the reason you often see them taken into custody so softly. This guy yesterday was there, no shirt on, barefooted, shooting up people, because the cops see him and say, "Oh my God, he had a bad day. We're so sorry for what happened to you, sir. These things happen," and they walk them off, take them to Burger King, and then they get that fame, that adoration. They become cult symbols for this certain underclass. So I think we have to start treating them the same way we treat terror cells, monitoring their internet chatter, finding out who they're associating with, finding out who radicalized them. Treat them no different than you treat ISIS. You'll start seeing a fixture of this, because we should not treat them as these mini celebrities, because that's exactly what they want.
Well, and Effie Rolfe makes the point online here that we must remember he was captured alive, barely clothed. I mean, how does that work? Everybody, I came across a story. I didn't realize that this was, I knew that we criminalized the poor, I guess. But a ProPublica has done a masterful job, as they do, of investigating. And they found that there is one state in the United States where falling behind on rent could mean jail time, and that state is Arkansas. Now, to be fair, they have a bill now where they're trying to pass so that they can overturn the law. But if you fall behind on your rent in Arkansas, guess what, everybody? You can go to jail. Before I go to you to get your reaction to that, let me go, attorneys Patillo and Hoffler, and of course, Attorney Hoffler will be on her own radio show this Tuesday at 10 o'clock Chicago time, Central Standard Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. She's going to be talking about issues like this and anything legal you want to throw her way. Call her, WAOK, down in Atlanta. You don't want to miss that. Go to WAOK and just, it's all over the world. Carol, I know you and Bab are going to be listening out in California. Let me go to you, Brian from Naperville. How you doing, Brian?
Good morning, Santita. How are you doing this fine day?
It's great hearing your voice. Please drive safely as you talk to us.
Oh, okay. Always. Safety my middle name.
Okay, I just want you to be okay. So talk to me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm almost there anyway. Yeah, so I wanted to weigh in on what you guys are talking about. I wanted to mostly weigh in on the, criminalizing the poor and whatnot kind of aspect, because I know a lot of people have been hurting from COVID and everything. I personally got laid off from my job a year ago, and it's been a struggle ever since. I've fallen a few months behind on my rent, trying to get the rental assistance figured out. That was part of the relief package, but it's been a nightmare trying to navigate that. Not sure if anybody else has been experiencing that, but I've noticed that there seems to be this sanctity of debt in this country. The same kind of thing came up with the student loan cancellation debate. How President Biden mentioned, I'd be okay with writing off $10,000 of the student debt, but we can't cancel it all. That's just out of control. I don't really know where the line is in that regard, but there's a lot of people hurting, and I can feel the despair. I got the relief payments on Wednesday. I had debt collectors calling me that afternoon, and it was very depressing. And I just feel for everybody else out there who's going through that same kind of thing. I don't really blame people for doing what they can to survive. I mean, it's probably why there's been all those carjackings and stuff in the city. I don't know. A lot of desperate people out there. We just don't seem to want to help them. Meanwhile, other countries are giving everybody $2,000 a month, to keep their heads above water, and we just can't do it here. I don't get it. But not saying that's what the shooter was doing. A lot of people have been drinking a lot of Kool-Aid out there, so I mean, could be a number of things. But everybody wants an enemy to blame, and like the first shooter, suspected as an Asian hate crime. There's a lot of that anti-Asian sentiment increasing in this country, and it really needs to be addressed, and we need to.
Brian, we always find someone to hate. Brian, we always find someone to hate, and it's and I think we've got to dig down deep, Brian, and look at these issues here, because as Attorney Patillo made the point, we understand white men, we pathologize everybody else. It's like, wait a minute, white people are individuals, and you don't even identify them by color. White people are just people. But if the shooter were black, it would have been a black man. It would have been a black woman. That's what happens. It would have been a Latinx man or woman. It would have been an Asian man or woman. But it's just a person. That's when you know they're white. And
Oh yeah.
But even listening to your story, listening to the pressure that you're under, people are feeling this pressure all around the country. And so I'm wondering. I'm not excusing people going on these rampages and killing folks. But when you have this kind of pressure cooker that people are living in, a lot of bad things can happen. Brian, are you doing okay now? Were you able to save any of that money? I know the $1,400 has got to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I'm kind of in a holding pattern so I can figure out what's going on with the rental assistance. I'm kind of doing what I can, but it's bleak. It's pretty bleak, but I'm doing the best I can. I have support structures that I'm leaning on, which that's another thing. I think people are too itemized in this country right now. Community has dissolved, and it's every man for themselves. I think that's another reason these people feel isolated, and they think, well, I got nothing else to live for. Might as well just take some people out with me because they'll give me that release. And it's messed up. I don't agree with it, but
no, yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, keep your problem to yourself. If you want to take out yourself, you shouldn't do it. But go on and do that.
yeah,
But leave me out of it. How about that? You don't need,
exactly.
you don't need
Yeah,
to
I
hurt
agree
me.
with you 100%, Santita.
Brian, I hope you will stay in touch, okay, and let us know what's going on uh, with your money. Let us know what's going on, how you're doing. I want to know how you're doing. And you can always, if you're running out of food, go to a food pantry over at Rainbow Push. We're also distributing food here in the city at 930 East 50th Street. Okay, so you should not go hungry. Okay.
Yeah, thankfully, I've one of my neighbors has connections with a food bank, so I've been doing okay there. But I appreciate you letting everybody else know about that option as well.
Okay. Well,
Because we all got to take care of each other. We all got to help each other out. So.
And if you need it, go to Rainbow Push. Okay, please do. If you
Sounds
need that.
good.
All right,
Of course.
Keep in touch with me though. Please keep in touch.
Yep. I got to get into work, but it's all great talking to you,
Run
Santita.
into work. Sending you much love, Brian in Naperville, everybody. Call me, text me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Wow. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association, you deal with issues like this and so many others, police brutality and things like that on your radio show on WAOK, the iconic Black Talk radio station in Atlanta. Of course, you come on today at 11 Eastern Standard Time, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. When you hear, it's one thing to hear about people's stories, right, Attorney Hoffler? But it's another thing to hear Brian. And he said, I just got the $1,400. It's already gone. It's depressing to me. And then, this is the only state in the union that does this, but other people are feeling it too. What about sending someone to jail for unpaid rent, particularly in times like these? And now, mind you, there's an Arkansas prosecutor who's been fired for calling this system cruel. Wow. Now, he was fired because he criticized the law. What is that? What is going on?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say to Brian to keep fighting. Santita, thank you for giving him some resources to go, place to go, Rainbow Push and other places, because there are organizations, there still are a lot of grassroots organizations that are helping the community. I know he felt as though, the community help was becoming an endangered species, but that's not the case. But I do understand why he feels that way. Millions of people feel that way in this country right now. Just despair and feel like they can't catch a break. Arkansas, this law in Arkansas is proof positive of some of the madness of some crazy laws on the books. We are still in a pandemic. There was a federal law that made it so that landlords could not go after tenants for a period of time because of the pandemic, because people were out of work, because people had difficulty, and because people were dying and being infected. And yet, in some states, now that things are opening up, and by the way, I don't even know that Arkansas ever suppressed this, they're putting people in jail. You can be 10 months late from rent, and you can be arrested and go to jail. It's a travesty, and to make matters worse for those who are criticizing this, saying it's inhumane and victimizing the poor, they're being fired. And so what I say is I sincerely hope that this law is repealed quick, fast, and in a hurry, firstly. Secondly, I sincerely hope, and this is something that we are investigating this, because I think Arkansas, and there's one other state that has something that's draconian. I know at the National Bar Association, landlord-tenant issues are a priority. We have partnerships with law firms throughout the country that are advocates and that are litigating on behalf of tenants these issues, trying to keep them from going to jail, trying to keep them from getting fined, trying to keep them from they're already almost homeless, but from preventing them from getting every single penny of their money taken away through landlords who are now being very aggressive in collecting their rent. So we're looking at this as a global issue here in the United States and investigating what can be done. And the first thing is repealing this law. And so I think hopefully that will happen soon. But there are other states that are doing the same type of thing. They may not be as blatant as Arkansas, and so we just need to stop this. And I do think on a federal level there should be addressed, because this is a crisis. We are not over the COVID issue. We are knee deep in the COVID issue, and we don't know. If we look at what's happening in Europe and listening to Dr. Deborah Verholden, we could be in this for a while. And so I think that we have to look at Arkansas. It could be Georgia, it could be Illinois, and it could be any state in the union, because this is happening one way or the other. So I think that the federal government needs to address this issue as well, because we can't keep oppressing and pushing down the least of these, because if so, what's going to happen? We're going to have more acts of desperation. I'm not talking about that person who shot up all those people. I'm saying acts of desperation out in the street, and more people will get. So.
No, but you're right. But even then, we don't know his story, and I'm not trying to give people excuses, CK and Attorney Patello. I'm not trying to do that. But what I do like to do is listen to people's narratives, because that helps us a lot to understand their thought processes and different pressures. Because you know what? I have to be frank with you. My back's not against the wall this morning, and yours is not either. I'm living at work, as they say. I'm working from my home. Okay? Most of us don't have that space. Most of us are these middle-class teachers who take care of our children. They are scared to death to go back into the classroom. They don't have access to the shots. And even if they get the shots, they're trying to figure out, well, are the shots really going to protect me? There's a lot going on out here. Attorney Robert
There's a lot going on.
Yes, Attorney Robert Patello, the last 3 minutes belong to you.
Well, no, on that point, I find it interesting the way that we have subconsciously been programmed. Because every time one of these white murderers starts going and killing 5, 10, 15 people, we say, well, they were crazy. What makes us think they were crazy? They just say that they were crazy as a way of taking away the culpability. But again, they never say when somebody on the south side or in the southeast part of or southwest part of Atlanta or in Baltimore, they never say, well, he just went crazy and started killing people. No, these are dangerous criminals and gangs who need to be regulated. We have to kick in their doors and have surveillance cameras and police dogs. We have to justify every sort of brutality against their community, because these people, they're criminal masterminds. Now, not little Timmy or Tommy. He just had a bad day. So I think we have to start working through the pathology that's been programmed into us when it comes to these white shooters. But secondarily, on the rental point, this is why it's important to have competent leadership in a crisis. Because what we're seeing is the intersection of Adam Smith's supply side economic ideas with the realities of the 21st century. Because we have these conservative state and local governments that believe in austerity, that hate the idea of helping poor people, that have this concept of the Puritan work ethic that we have to beat these poor people and keep them down hard enough for them to actually want to better themselves, not simply understand that we live in a society of abundance, and the best way to deal with people being out of work for a year is just to cancel rent and compensate landlords. It ain't that hard. It ain't that difficult. We got $1.6 trillion for F-35 fighter jets. Cancel rent, compensate landlords. You get millions of people out of a hole. Both on the landlord side, you prevent a foreclosure crisis from hitting us in the fall, because once these federal programs are over, many people's homes who have not been able to have rental income in a year are going to go into foreclosure, crashing the market. You stave that off by making sure the landlords can have compensation for that. Instead of putting millions of people around the country, ruining their credit through eviction proceedings where they won't be able to rent in the future for a decade to come, you cancel that debt out. It's a once in a generation, once in a century pandemic. You raise taxes slightly on our corporate friends who claim that tax cuts will kill them, and then you can save millions of jobs, millions of livelihoods around the country. But when you don't have political leadership that believes in helping poor people, the only thing that they can see is, let's lock them up. They're too poor to pay their bills. Got to put them in jail, teach them a lesson as if this is the Star Chamber in the Middle Ages. But we need to have competent leadership that's willing to really help people.
Amen to that. Cancel the rent. Compensate the landlords. It is very, very simple. I mean, a jet you don't need to use. A fighter jet. Come on, everybody. And I believe in a robust defense. I do, as long as it does not create offense. That's a whole different conversation. No, it's actually the same conversation because people are starving out here. People are hurting out here. What are we going to do about it? And we have the power to do things about it. You got to vote about it. And then after you vote, you must continue to stay on your elected officials, whether your preferred candidate of choice won or not. Let's go on and step up to the plate and make America what it's supposed to be. Everybody, let's talk about reparations. What do you think about them? What should they look like? On the Santita Jackson Show. And check out Attorney C.K. Hoffler at 11 o'clock today, Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on WAOK in Atlanta. Back in just a minute. CK?
Yes, yes, yes. Good morning.
Green is here and Fancher's here. I'm calling last, or Mr. McKee.
I'm good. No, there's so many things going on. I'm like you. When I go to bed at night, and sometimes I get up in the middle of the night, and when I get up in the middle of the night, it's just very brief. Mm-hmm. I just turn on the TV, or the TV might be on. I may fall asleep on the TV, and I just see just devastating things have happened in the course of 4 or 5 hours that I've been asleep, or it's gotten worse. The killings in Atlanta, there were 3 people that were shot and killed, and then the number turned to 8 were killed. 8 died as a result. So it's just,
I don't know.
It's
I'm getting up at 2.
And
I'm up at 2
because
I'm trying to get ahead of the news, and then it's like, no, you didn't, kid. I mean, a whole universe of news has tumbled out overnight. So I'm going to let you and Attorney Patillo go. And I want to have you all come back. I'm going to call you because I have something I want to talk with you about tomorrow on the air, you and Robert. And, of course, everyone, please support Attorney Robert Patillo and Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Her show. What's the name of your show, C.K.?
Law and Legal with CK.
All right now. So you're going to get the best legal advice for free. Double. You know what? Next time you got to give me your call-in number. What's your call-in number? Do you know it yet?
I do. Yeah, I do have it. I'll text it to you.
Okay.
I can give it to you right now. It's on the phone if you want. I just have to look at it on the phone. Okay, hold on a second.
All right, all the guests are here.
Okay, well, you know what? Text it to me because I'm going to say hello to my guest for the next segment. But she comes on today, everybody, at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If you want some great legal advice, and you can call her and get it. Go to WAOK. And of course, Robert Patillo is on WAOK from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. His is a great show.
And I have the number.
Okay, what is it? Tell everybody.
It's 404-892-2703. 404-892-2703.
All right, everybody, starting at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, which is 8 o'clock out there for you and Carol. And then, of course, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Sending you much love, Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Robert Patillo. But let me welcome my guest, Joe. You know I love you and support you. You're the best. Of course, we have got someone new to our platform today, everybody. Before we come up on the air, welcome Mike Green, brilliant economist. We're so excited that he's here. I had a wonderful conversation with him yesterday. I feel like I already know him. How about that, right? It's just great. How you doing, Mike?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice. And of course, they're going to be listening as you and I talk, but then they're going to come in. Attorney Mark Fancher. He is from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Brilliant analyst. And of course, Dwight McKee, a social scientist. He's one of the founding members of Operation Push. He's with the National Action Network. Brilliant social scientist. And we're going to also bring back Reverend Stephen Thurston, Dylan Altoff. But we need to hear from Mike Green. He's done so much work and he's put so much thought into what reparations should look like, what they are, what they should look like. It's the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness. He's the co-founder of that great institute. But we need to talk about what it should look like, because now we're seeing a divide in the Black community in Evanston where they are instituting this measure, because some people are saying, well, they're applauding this, and most of us feel that we do need reparations. But many people are saying, well, these reparations are not enough. They're not enough. $25,000 for the for the toil and the blood of our ancestors who built this nation. It's not enough. So what do you think about that, everybody? Call me, text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Of course, all of my morning stars, I want you to like and share this show today. Please like and share. And go over to my YouTube channel, The Santita Jackson Show. So everybody, of course, Attorney Mark Fancher and Mike Green and Dwight McKee and Pastor Stephen Thurston. Everybody wanted to jump in on this conversation today, Mike Green, because, I mean, how ironic is it that the place where many of Sally Hemings' descendants settled would be the first place to officially give us reparations in the United States? You can't make this stuff up. God is nothing if not symmetrical. Unbelievable. But thank you for being with us today. Because for the record, he's out in Oregon, Attorney Fancher and Dwight. So this is very early for him. Very early, and he's been so generous. He said, "Oh no, I'm up anyway because I have to be up on Eastern time." I said, "But I still feel, I still feel like, oh my gosh, I got you up so early. Oh my gosh!" But I'm so glad you're with us today. So glad, and so glad that you'll help us to make some sense of this, because your reputation precedes you, and people absolutely feel that you're one of the most brilliant minds in this space, and we're very, very excited that you're with us today. So, Mike.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Mike Green, this is Dwight McKee, as I shared, and Attorney Mark Fancher. And Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee, this is Mike Green, brilliant economist, helping us to.
Good morning. Yeah, it's a pleasure and an honor to meet you. Same here.
Okay. Hey, you guys, what about Elgin Baylor? Oh, boy. I said, now that's a name I know because of my parents. Wow. Made his transition. Well, that generation is shifting on out of here. Boy, look at what they did when they were here. Wow.
Eating better every day can help make you and your kids healthier. Search We Can online to find out more. A message from the Ad Council.
Wow. So how's everybody today? Very quickly, what do you all make of what happened in Boulder yesterday? Were you surprised by that? Oh, don't jump in at once. Dwight, what do you think? Or you, Mark, or you, Mike?
Yeah, I just think it's more of the same. I mean, this is the, somehow this country experiences these things, and maybe as a way of coping, after it's over, they just sort of, go into a state of denial and say, okay, it's done, it'll never happen again. It's going to happen again. And,
Hold on.
I think what we're looking at are the.
Oh, hold on. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome. We have a lot of good fun on the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Of course, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text me. Still getting some feedback, Dylan, so let's cut that so we can get on with the rest of the show. All right, everybody, I want to talk about reparations. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. What should they look like? Well, Evanston is about to give us a little show of that, and so we're going to be talking with this magnificent panel about that today. But first, a few of these headlines. In Chicago, we're expecting a high of 62 degrees today. There will be rain. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you're going to get some rain too. A high of 59 degrees. The Dow closed down 234 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed up 99 points, and the S&P 500 closed down too. Dedicating the show today to one of the icons of all of sport, the iconic NBA superstar Elgin Baylor. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Dr. J, LeBron James, not in that order. They all owe some of their greatest moves to this great basketball player. Wow. Can you believe he has made his transition? He was 86, retired almost 50 years ago. Of course, he's an Hall of Famer. And we just dedicate the show to this great man who gave us so many thrills in the course of his lifetime. 10 people were killed in the Colorado supermarket shooting in Boulder, Colorado. The police arrested a suspect, but didn't reveal his name, but they arrested him alive, everybody. And we don't know many details about this, but we do know that 10 people were killed, including a police officer who had 7 children. He leaves behind 7 children. Pray for that family and all of those families today. The CDC director said the U.S. could see an unavoidable surge of COVID-19 restrictions, as states are beginning to loosen their restrictions. She is cautioning against that. Wear your masks, even if after you've gotten the shot. Wear your mask, wash your hands, be physically distant, everybody. Think about that. The AstraZeneca trial has been called inappropriate. Now, this is an unusual and stern rebuke from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is the institute that is overseen by Dr. Anthony Fauci. The British-Swedish pharmaceutical firm may have only used partial data when it announced the results from U.S. trials. So that means that the trial results are not accurate. So we will see what's going to happen there. The Biden administration expelled just 13% of the migrant families in the past week. The Biden administration kept a Trump-era policy known as Title 42 as a tool to quickly turn back adults and families who illegally cross the southern border. But new Department of Homeland Security data leaked to Axios, that news aggregation site, shows in recent days that it's hardly been used for families. So, everybody, let's get to some of these. Let's get to what happened in Evanston, Illinois. Wow. Mama D, you know this is for you, so please call us. And let's talk about reparations. The nation's first government reparations program for African Americans, for Black people who were descended from slaves, was approved on Monday night in the Chicago suburb of Evanston, an action that advocates say represents a critical step in rectifying wrongs caused by slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, housing discrimination, and in pushing forward on similar compensation efforts across the country. What do you think about that, everybody? Ron Daniels, very dear friend of mine, president of the National African American Reparations Commission, wants redress at local and federal governments. He said, right now, the whole world is looking at Evanston, Illinois. This is a moment like none other that we've ever seen, and it's a good moment. So what do you think about that? Because there are other stories that are saying that this has divided the community in Evanston, the Black community. Some people are saying that this is not enough, and some people are saying this is a good start. So we have with us Mike Green, brilliant economist, who's talking to us about this today. He's from the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness. It's located in Philadelphia, but guess what? He's out in Oregon, so he is living in both places at one time. Attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and Dwight McKee, sociologist, and of course, Pastor Stephen Thurston from the Salem Baptist Church, who was just on with us giving us the good word. Mike Green, reparations, what are they, and what should they look like?
That's a great question. Let's start by seeing if we can level set what we mean by reparations. When I hear the term reparations, I think of restitution to make people whole who have been victimized by systemic wrongs. Can we all agree on that, or is there something else we'd like to add or take away from that definition?
We are together.
Okay. So if we're talking about restitution to make people whole who have been victimized by systemic wrongs, then we got to start with what was wrong. What was the systemic wrong that injured these people? And in my background, when I was back in the Navy, I was an engineer. So I'm a systems thinker. And when you want to look for solutions, you start with understanding the cause of the problem, not the symptoms, but the actual cause, the root cause of the problem. So when we talk about racism in this country, when we talk about systemic racism, the term race is really shorthand for racial hierarchy. Racial hierarchy is a ladder of human value with white people at the top and black people at the bottom. This is a false understanding of human value, but it is systemic in this country. This is how this country was built on a ladder of human value with white people at the top. That is what we mean by white supremacy. White people being at the top of a ladder of human value, black people being at the bottom, white people being in control. This country was started that way. We are built and established on a bedrock of white supremacy. And when this country was started in 1776, it was started as a whites-only country. It wasn't until 1868, 3 years after the Civil War, that a 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution to extend national citizenship to black people and other immigrants born on this soil. So we know that the establishment of this country was built on a bedrock foundation of white supremacy, and we know that the segregationist policies and practices that were established to protect white supremacy. And we know that from 1865, right after the Civil War, when 4 million black people emerged from generations of slavery, we know that up until 1896, when the Supreme Court officially declared this nation two separate Americas, one white, wealthy, and powerful, one black, poor, and powerless. That's where white America and black America came from. We didn't invent that. White people invented that, just like they invented racism. And so when from 1865 to 1896, 53,000 black people lost their lives. They were killed by white terrorists. So white terrorism reigned from 1865 all the way up until the death of Dr. King in 1968. So we're talking more than 100 years of white terrorism, white riots, white pillaging and plundering. And through that time, black people had to find ways to survive. Through that time, now we're talking after slavery. Let's not even get into this whole slavery. I mean, the trauma, generations, and the rape culture that came out of slavery. Let's set that aside for a moment. Let's look at what happened in the 100 years after that. So if we look at it, we see that black people weren't sitting around twiddling our thumbs. We built more than 100 historically black colleges and universities. In the first 20 years after slavery, we built more than 200 towns. I'm not talking about a house here, a house there. I'm talking about full towns. I'm talking about we were fighting to become empowered in this country. And to be fair, in the first 7 years, from 1865 to 1872, white radicals in Congress, and we're talking Thaddeus Stevens in the House, and we're talking Charles Sumner in the Senate. These men believed that the number one priority of Congress, get this, the number one priority of Congress was the political and economic empowerment of black people. Imagine that. Two white people thinking that. That's a radical thought. That's why they were called radicals. And so these white men set the conditions. 1866 Civil Rights Act. You know, there have been 8 Civil Rights Acts. Every time a Civil Rights Act comes around, people say, oh, you've achieved something. We haven't achieved anything. You guys are telling each other, stop treating black people badly. And you can't figure that out. So you have to do it again over and over and over. It's 8 times you've told each other, stop treating black people badly, and you continue to do that. Now, that being said, set that aside. 1866 First Civil Rights Act. You had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. You changed the Constitution. White radicals changed the Constitution 3 times in less than 7 years. And they funded the Freedmen's Bureau, which was our welcome mat coming out of slavery. And it was the only federal government program that addressed the holistic needs of black people. That program was attacked and defunded in less than 7 years. The Freedmen's Bank, Frederick Douglass became the president of the Freedmen's Bank trying to save it. They destroyed that. Everything we created during that time frame, all the towns we built, all the communities we built, the Black Wall Streets from Tulsa to Durham to Harlem, Wilmington, North Carolina was ransacked. We're talking about 100 years of white terrorism that directly targeted black families, created the Great Migration. We were fleeing from the South and running to the North, and we found the same problems in the North. And then you had the policies, the public policies of urban planning, the public policies of raising our communities to the ground and building freeways over them, the public policies of denying us economic opportunities and economic access, and the public policies of sending our children to the worst the worst quality schools in the richest nation on earth. Ubiquitously, our children were served by the worst quality schools in the richest nation on earth. So now you're talking segregation in housing, segregation in schools, and of course, access to capital and banking. These are the three issues that Dr. King said were the primary issues of the Negro Revolution that rose up in 1963 on the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. 1963 was the beginning of the Negro Revolution. Dr. King wrote a book about it, Why We Can't Wait. The very first chapter is called The Negro Revolution. Why 1963? In 1965, the Department of Labor published its own report called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. I'll say that again, national action. The first chapter is called The Negro Revolution. What did they say about the Negro Revolution? It's the greatest movement in the history of the United States. They said that, and they compared it to the American Revolution itself. How come we don't know any of these things? The systemic wrongs in schools, in educating our children. Imagine that. Your children ask for bread, you give them a stone. I mean, come on, I think I read that in the Bible somewhere. The systemic problems in housing, you're denying us the quality, safe housing and the access to capital to own our homes, to build our businesses and grow our businesses, and you're segregating us because you can't put us on reservations like they did the natives. Now, what we're talking about is white supremacy. That is what we're talking about. So when people tell me when they want to talk to me about race, I want to talk to you about white supremacy, because this is what we're trying to disrupt. This is the problem that we're struggling with today, because white supremacy wants to remain supreme. Segregationist policies and practices did not go away. They were passed down from generation to generation. They were fought against. People gave their lives. Everybody that walked and ran around with Dr. King, asked John Lewis, who got his head beat down on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We're still trying to fight for basic rights because access to the polls gives us access to political power. Access to political power is not the end result, it's the beginning, because access to political power allows us to change policies and systems and allows us to disrupt these segregationist systems that continue to oppress all of our children and all of our communities and continue to deny us equitable access to ownership of the American dream. When you talk to me about racial equity, I say, oh, you're talking to me about equitable ownership of the American dream, ownership of land, homes, businesses, and intellectual property. I want access to all equitable ownership. That's the end game. So if you're not measuring that for me, if I'm not measuring that, and no one's measuring that, by the way, there is no strategic plan in this country for equitable ownership for Black and brown communities. No strategic plan, but there are more than 600 that blanket the nation for white communities. In fact, you have several there in Chicago. Region 1 Planning Commission, produces your Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies Plan. You've got 3 of them, 3 different planning commissions in Chicago. All of them have strategic plans. In fact, I just read one from that's a 5-year plan from 2021 to 2026 that governs what your conditions are going to be to create prosperity in your region. None of those plans that are funded by the federal government, the state government, public-private partnerships, none of those plans anywhere in the country are prioritizing the most vulnerable populations and their outcomes. But yet, that is exactly what they were established for in 1964 by the federal government. And so here we are today, not knowing our history, not knowing the systems that we inherited, and having an inability to change these systems because we don't know what we inherited. And so when we talk about reparations, the restitution to make people whole who have been victimized by systemic wrongs in education, systemic wrongs in housing, systemic wrongs in banking and access to capital, systemic wrongs in the treatment of our people, systemic wrongs in being able to participate as voters in this country, systemic wrongs that are ubiquitous across this country. When we don't have a strategic plan that addresses the broad range of systemic wrongs, then what we're doing is picking a particular area and creating a program targeting that area. I applaud Evanston's housing program, but that is what it is. And we have to recognize that that is what it is. It is not a strategic plan that's going to cover generations of systemic wrongs across the board. It is a program that is a housing program that is covering one issue, and inadequately at that. But I condemn something that is beginning a process, because the very first step is not the last. So I applaud them on their housing program, and I applaud them and I encourage them to move forward beyond that and expand it to a commission that begins to develop a strategic plan that covers holistically the systemic wrongs that need to be changed, the disruption of the policies and practices in the region that need to be changed, and a strategic plan that prioritizes the economic outcomes, measurable impact that create generational wealth and generational opportunity. If we can move toward that, and this is just the beginning, then yes, I think it's a good step. If this step is a way to cheapen the process of reparations, if it's a way to deflect, if it's a way to dilute, then I have a problem with that. But at this point, I think it's a program. I think it's a good program as a starting point, and I hope that it continues to move forward. Now, I want to say one more thing, and then I'll shut up, because I've taken up a whole lot more of my time. The challenge we have in our systems starts with education. White people don't know their history. Neither do black people. Most black people. Some of us have lived through history, and you know who I'm talking about. But most of us don't know the history. And since we're all born into the middle of a chapter of a book, there's always going to be adventure and intrigue going on in the middle of a chapter when you open that book. And we're all born in the middle of a chapter of American history. What we have to do to find out what's going on now is to go back to the beginning and understand how we got to the place where we are now, the power dynamics, the people in charge, the systems that were established. And once we understand what we have inherited, we can then determine how we want to change the systems so that we do not continue to sustain the status quo and pass on to future generations the problems that we inherited. And we all inherited the same segregationist policies and practices. So white people and black people are all in this together. We have to decide together what kind of society we want to pass on to other people. Now, the problem in K-12 is where we form our perspectives of society, is that K-12 ubiquitously teaches white supremacy. I'm going to say that again. K-12 ubiquitously teaches history, economics, civics through the lens of white supremacy. Now, that is not me saying that. That's Harvard University saying that. In 2018, in the Chronicle of Higher Education, an article called Textbook Racism was published. 2018, here's what it said. Here's the excerpt. I found myself immersed in Harvard's collection of nearly 3,000 U.S. history textbooks dating from about 1800 to the 1980s. One morning, I realized precisely what I was seeing, what instruction, what priorities were leaping from the pages into the brains of the students compelled to read them: white supremacy. One text even began with the capitalized title, The White Man's History. The assumptions of white priority, white domination, and white importance underlie every chapter and every theme of the thousands of textbooks that blanketed the country. This is the vast tectonic plate that underlies American culture. And so today, when we hear white people say, well, I thought racism was over. I thought we dealt with that somewhere in the past. That kind of thinking of a meritocratic, benevolent, great America, that's marketing. That's propaganda. They have never been taught their true history. And the reason they think that is because the bubble of insulation, the bubble of white privilege that they live in, they are beneficiaries of the status quo. They have not been able to poke their head outside that bubble to see the vast amount of horrific impact that is occurring to people who are crying out in anguish every single generation. When we say Black Lives Matter, it's because we're trying to tell people that Black lives are no less worthy, no less value than white lives. And this ladder of human value that you've established under racial hierarchical ideology is false and is inconsistent with your Christian values. We are equal value.
Hold on, Mike Green, economist. Everybody wants more, 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 more. National Institute for Inclusiveness, competitiveness, everybody. Let's talk about reparations. Wow, what a history lesson we've received on the Santita Jackson Show. 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about reparations, everybody. Back in just a minute. Wow, Mike. How about that? Now, Stephen Thurston.
I'm sorry, man.
No. It's 500 years of pent up. It's what it is. Pastor Thurston, don't you think he needs to come and speak at the House of Hope? Yes.
He needs to speak everywhere. That was amazing, sir. Thank you. I have nothing to contribute. He has said it all. He's covered the whole thing. Man.
What? But but this is. How would that impact your congregation? Getting that information.
They would be enriched. They would be empowered. They would be inspired. They would see that nothing's wrong with their thinking.
That's right. And you know what? They would change their neighborhoods.
Yes.
See, Dwight McKee, Attorney Mark Fancher, Mike Green. My parents, when I was born, my parents didn't have a home. They were homeless. They lived with the Halseys. And that wonderful married couple in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was born when my parents were in college. And they and Mrs. Halsey said, well, if it's a girl, you can live with us, but if it's a girl, can I name her? So that's my name. And my mother said, but my parents had another kind of thinking. She said, when we finally got our place, and it was a public housing project in Greensboro, North Carolina, she said, I made my curtains and I planted some flowers in our front, that little sidewalk that we had, just that little patch of grass, because I wanted it to look like a home. Okay? And I think that wherever you are, you can blossom where you're planted. And we've got to. And so hearing that information, you don't apologize for anything, Mike Green. Dwight McKee, Attorney Fancher, I want you all to react to him on the other side. Hearing that information, which is a game changer for us. That's my point. It's a game changer. It changes how we think about ourselves and how we will relate to each other and how we will relate to the very homes we live in. We would not let anyone drop trash on our streets.
2 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Because when you think about your ancestors, it's like, wait a minute. Because now I've lived with 3 of them, 5 of them. I've lost my grandmothers in the past 5 years, 2 of them. I said, wow, they're ancestors now. So now I have to tell stories to my nieces and nephews about them. Wow.
Yeah.
Now I have to tell them about Grandma Tibby, my great-grandmother, who they never met. They're ancestors now. And when I think of them and their ambitions for us, oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No. We have to hear you, Mike Green. We have to hear you frequently. We have to hear you all the time. And this is not just for Black people, everybody. I have a lot of white brothers and sisters and Latinx brothers and sisters and Asian brothers and sisters who listen to this show. When you understand what is the damage inflicted upon Black people, then you can understand, it contextualizes everything else, because everybody became a citizen after us.
Yeah.
That had to be established first. So,
yeah.
Because remember, they wanted to send us back to Africa. It makes me hot when I think about it. That was the debate. Send me back where? You kidding me? That's the motherland. There's no question about it. But I built this place. And I want a return on my investment. Yeah. And you're gonna make America right. That's what you're gonna do. And won't be right until you make it right with me and until you make it right with the indigenous peoples. This is their land.
Yeah.
What? Oh, thank you, Mike Green. I want everyone to react to you when we get back. But boy, oh boy, it's a whole lot. You're a whole lot. And thank God for you. Really. I told you all he was great.
You're very kind.
No, you are very kind. You are very great. Okay, Stephen. Pastor Thurston.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Wow, everybody, talking about reparations on the Santita Jackson Show. Guess who just dropped the mic on WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends page? Well, this is Mike Green, brilliant economist, National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness, telling us what reparations, why he built, talk about building a case for reparations. Before we get back to you, Mike Green, because I know you're running to some important meetings today, I wanted this panel to react to what they heard. Dwight McKee, of course, noted social scientist and founder of Operation Push, National Action Network, and attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and Pastor Stephen Thurston of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope, returned to be with us, author of Mirror Moments. Let me start with you, attorney Mark Fancher. What did you hear?
Well, Brother Green dropped the mic. After he dropped it, I picked it up and gave it back to him so he could drop that again. That was music to my ears, my heart, and my soul. So, I thank him. I guess that, and let me also say that my comments are not necessarily reflective of the viewpoints of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, which has really been at the heart of the reparations movement. Was a co-founder of INCOPRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, a number of things. But what I am concerned about is that given the political paradigm that we have, which, as Brother Green explained, is built by and for the maintenance of white supremacy, I think we may be setting ourselves up for continuing frustration as we continue to agitate for reparations, because the process, the institutions through which we are trying to achieve them, were designed specifically for the purpose of ensuring that white supremacy is maintained always and forever. You know, white supremacy yesterday, white supremacy today, white supremacy tomorrow. And when the system responds to agitation by those who seek reparations, the response is most likely, if not certainly, going to be one that may in some way try and appease those who are agitating, but which will not go to the heart of the matter, which will not respond in a way that is going to be satisfactory to the heartfelt yearnings of enslaved Africans and their descendants, and in the interests of justice. Because if we're honest, then what is required in order to do justice for African people, what's required in order to do justice for indigenous peoples, is for the entire system, not just of white supremacy, but for the entire structure of the United States of America to be completely and totally obliterated, and for there to begin a new process, a new construction of something new, which does take into account all of the historical wrongs, and which returns to those things which have been those who have been deprived of land, those who have been victims of genocide, those who have been victims of enslavement. It returns to them everything which has been lost. And that does not sit well with either the white community in terms of the way that it's been trained by white supremacy, or with the white supremacist system itself. I mean, it's comparable in many ways to the experience of the late, great reggae singer Bob Marley, who, when he experienced the first manifestations of cancer, it appeared in the form of an ulcer on his toe. Because of his religious convictions, he did not respond well to his doctor's advice that the toe be amputated in order to save his life. And so instead they performed an operation which just sort of covered over the ulcer. You know, there was a skin graft over it. And so because it looked like it had been healed, because it looked like it had been dealt with, he presumed that the problem was over. In terms of how reparations is frequently dealt with in this country, it's very comparable. I mean, we need to do some cutting. We need some incisions. We need to carve out the cancer, which has created all of the racial tension, racial problems, the oppression that's been experienced by enslaved African people and by the First Nations peoples. And America and its systems, the politics, the political structures that we have, they're not built to do that. And so what we have to have is a revolution before we are in a position to seriously look at and think about reparations in the way that history demands.
Pastor Thurston, your thoughts?
Yeah, both of these gentlemen have dropped mics, picked them back up, and then dropped them again. Pastoring people who suffered directly at the hands of the oppression that's been placed upon us. I think both gentlemen hit on my point that I would make, and I always push from the pulpit. It's about policy change, and it's not just dealing with the symptom, but driving at the source. And when we address the source, the symptoms often evaporate, go away. So I think it's incumbent upon us to challenge white people. As Mr. Green said, know your history. Know that affirmative action was first for white people. Know that everything was done. Whenever there's been an issue, a problem with white America, we found the finances to assuage their issue. That it's time that we set policy in place and institutions in place that directly benefit us as a community. From a biblical lens, they functioned as a collective community. We function here in the 21st century westernized America as individualists. And so our people will benefit best when institutions are set up that help us as a collective community to move forward together.
Institutions like?
Our own banks, our own institutions for housing, for education, all of those critical pieces that Mr. Green spoke about. We have to take ownership back. When we were living together, working together, buying from ourselves, we were doing better as a people collectively. Right. And so we have to have those things in place to help us collectively grow and emerge from the depression we've been in.
We don't have them anymore. We don't even have, an Ebony or Jet magazine that tells us what we've been doing all week and throughout the month.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a big loss. Dwight McKee.
Well, first thing is, I wouldn't call what they're doing in Evanston reparations, but victim compensation. Is that if somebody steals your purse with your money in it, and then they give you back the purse and keep the money, that's not reparations. It's reparations. If you want to compare a reparations issue or real reparations issue, is that when the Haitians overcame the French during Napoleon with Toussaint Overture, the French lost, but as part of the compensation package, they forced the Haitians to pay them reparations, a fourth of their economy, for 140 years. And so they didn't finish paying until they went from Napoleon to Jackie Robinson starting playing baseball by the time they paid their debt off. 140 years that they had to pay for the right not to enslave the Haitians. If you compare that with that and $25,000 over time that comes out of the budget for drug deals and drug transactions, then we really do ourselves a disservice when we call it reparations. I mean, it's a start, and you give people some money and make them the people in Evanston feel better about themselves than the people who get the money. But the fact of the matter is, I agree with Mark as always. We have to have a whole new rehashing of what this company is and how this company operates. One is that you can never have real reparations as long as somebody else controls the cash flow and the value of money. In order for you to have real reparations, you have to be in charge of distribution of goods and services and of wealth. And right now, what we do is that we have to wait on white people to dispense to us what they think that we may deserve. As long as they have that kind of power, as long as they have the power to establish value, then there'll never be reparations because they will always change the equation when they're in charge. We need our own Federal Reserve where we have the right to put our own money based on our own needs and based on our own economic interest. It's hard to have a plan, as the doctors say. We don't have a plan because we don't control the flow of resources and goods and services. Once we control that, as the Federal Reserve does for white people, then at least we can have a conversation about, compensation of goods and services. Lastly, for me, is that when the slave owners had to give up slavery, they were compensated. They were given out 40 acres and a mule. When the Europeans came over, they were given the Homestead Act where they could get land for $2 an acre. We have had no program for the distribution of land. Now, the problem with it is that most of the land really is all of the land is really natives' land, so we would have to negotiate with them. But for us to have any part of the land mass, the Europeans would have to give that up, give it back to the natives, share part of it with us, and they are totally unwilling to do that. And without, as Mark says, revolution.
Mike Green, your response to everything, and what say you?
Okay, well, I'm going to throw out some numbers because these gentlemen are on point. I do think that if we're waiting on white America to come up with a plan for restitution, a plan for reparations to make us whole for systemic wrongs that they have continued throughout generations, including into this generation, if we're waiting on that, that's not going to happen. So these gentlemen are on point. But we can create a plan. Even if we don't have the power to implement the plan, we can create a plan. And anytime we create a plan, we have to understand what numbers are we trying to move? What needles are we trying to move? So I'm going to give you some. Right now, 3/4, 75% of black children are stuck in high poverty, poor quality schools. I want every single one of those schools to be the best schools in their regions. In other words, you go to the real estate agent, you say, hey, I want to buy a house, but I want to buy a house in a great school district. They're going to take you over to the black side of town because that's where the best schools are. I don't care how much money it costs to make those schools what they are. Those children were born into poverty through no fault of their own. They're navigating dysfunctional communities, economically starved communities where the prisons are actually directing released inmates into those communities where they can't live anywhere else. They're told where they got to live, and there's no economic opportunity for them. So there's underground economies going on that threatens the safety of those children. Those children go to those schools, and we give them the worst schools? No. I want those to be the best schools. That's one. I want us to understand that right now, 44% of black Americans own their own homes, and those homes are devalued because of where they're located. 44%, that's back when Dr. King was alive and decrying the discrimination in housing, discrimination in schools, and discrimination in banking and access to capital. That was the three primary focus points of the Negro Revolution that we still don't teach. One, we would teach that in every school, by the way. Why We Can't Wait will be mandatory reading in every level. That being said, we need to increase the home ownership of black Americans, not by 5 or 10%, but in parity with white Americans. 76% of white Americans own their own homes. But 76% of black Americans should be owning their own homes, whatever the strategy, whatever the cost, whatever the challenges need to be overcome in order to move that 30 percentage points should be done. Now, of course, access to capital and banking and owning our own businesses. Let's look at businesses. Since when Dr. King died, there was less than 200,000 black-owned businesses nationwide. Since then, up to 2012, we now have 2.6 million black-owned businesses. That is hockey stick growth in entrepreneurship and innovation, and we're out there risking everything trying to own our own businesses. But only a small percentage of that are employer businesses, and that's where we need to focus. What is the employer business? What is the employer percentage owned by black people in Evanston, in Chicago, in any region you want to point to? What are the employers, the percentage of employers owned by black people? Now, whatever that percentage is, we need to focus on moving that percentage, because I can tell you right now, 2.6 million black-owned businesses produce less than 1% GDP in this country. Less than 1% GDP. That's a rounding error. You can wipe out every doggone black-owned business. That's all your Oprah Winfrey's, your Jay-Z's, that's everybody. And they would not even miss it. Less than 1%, 156 years after slavery, less than 1%. That's what our productivity is, even though our activity is through the roof. That is because the systems deny us. The systems oppress us. And so this strategy, a reparation strategy, should include how many employer businesses are going to be the outcome of the strategy, and what percentage of the overall employer landscape will that be? Because right now, black employers represent 2% nationwide of the total employer landscape. White businesses represent 80% of the employers. So when you talk about wage disparities, when you talk about racism in the workplace, you're talking about white people who own those businesses and lead the culture of those environments, presenting and sustaining those problems. So our strategy, our plan, has to be a plan that moves needles, that are measurable. So we understand that when we come out of the plan, whatever it is, when we achieve the goals of the plan, racial equity goals, that they are measurable and that they represent equitable ownership of the American dream of prosperity.
Let me go to Maurice. Maurice, your comment or question?
Maurice Nichols, Bank of Africa Project. Good morning, sweetie. God bless you.
God bless you.
Mr. Green, I am enjoying you. What if we could come up with a 10-year campaign aimed at the black community, which simply said, think black, take Africa back? Do you think something like that would be useful in this dilemma, sir?
Mike Green, what about taking Africa back? Is it ours to take back?
It's a very good. It's a very good point. Now let me extrapolate on the point. We have an infrastructure that is underutilized, undervalued. That is the HBCUs. It took us 100 years to build those HBCUs. They are still here with us, and they do the thing that they were designed to do. They cultivate the inherent talent in the most vulnerable populations in America, and they do a doggone good job of it. But we don't invest enough in it to increase the productivity. That legacy landscape is also a legacy landscape that has access and networks and relationship to Africa and the nations in Africa, 54 nations in Africa. So we have a way to connect the global diaspora, but we have forgotten that infrastructure exists.
Yes.
And,
yes,
and,
Santita.
And it's been underutilized, as you've just said. Yes, Mark Fancher?
Yes, I want to agree with the caller. I think that when you get right down to it, that's the only way that we really have a prayer of achieving what we want. Pan-Africanism has a long, rich tradition and history. There are organizations like the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, which have been pushing this idea for a very long time, which is that Africa, in terms of its natural resources, its wealth, its oil reserves, its gold, coltan, chromium, bauxite, all of those minerals, these are things that the planet needs. And unfortunately, Africa and African people do not control any of it because foreign interests, foreign corporations, imperialism generally has Africa, locked down. lock, stock, and barrel. And so if Africa and African people globally are able to get control of those resources, things that if the rest of the world does not have, the world will collapse, then the paradigm changes fundamentally. And really the only way that you can do that is through a revolutionary change in Africa that throws out the foreign interests, throws out the foreign corporations, throws out the settlers, and reclaims Africa's resources, not just for African people in Africa, but for descendants of Africans throughout the world. That is a game changer, and it's what's necessary, because if you look at reparations and how and when they've been granted in other situations, you see it was after the people who've been victimized and oppressed have achieved some level of power. Our Jewish brothers and sisters during the Holocaust were not in concentration camps saying we really need to have a committee to go and meet with Hitler and tell him that he needs to pay us reparations for what he's doing to us. They're in a vulnerable and powerless situation at that point. It makes no sense for them to even try and do that. It's only after a world war was fought, the Nazis were driven out of power, that they began to talk about reclaiming for the community that had suffered under Nazism that which to which they were entitled. When the Japanese, who were descendants and victims of internment in this country, received reparations in the 1980s, it wasn't because Ronald Reagan was benevolent, because he felt badly about it. It was because at that time the Japanese economy was going like gangbusters. It had the U.S. economy knocked back on its heels, and they didn't know what to do. And so in order to appease the Japanese government and its economy, they made this gesture of granting reparations to the Japanese. So before we really seriously can have an expectation of reparations, we need power. And Pan-Africanism is the road to getting that. And the more that people sign on to that idea, the quicker we'll be in a position to have the power we need to get it.
No question. I'm going to get a final thought from
we need to,
White McKee, 30 seconds.
We need to be able to control our own currency in order to make this work. First question Jesus asked is whose face is on the money? Because that's who controls the value system of a society. They killed Gaddafi because he was trying to create a Bank of Africa where he controlled his own currency and got off those petrodollars. For this to work, we need our own Federal Reserve, or African American Federal Reserve, where we control our own money supply.
Amen to that. And 30 seconds for you, Pastor Thurston.
I concur with all that's been said. I'm here. I concur with all that.
I know you do. Mike Green, I'm going to give you the last 2 minutes. They belong to you. Oh, boy, thank you so much for all that you've done. Chaparral, stay on because we're going to get you just on the other side of the break. Mike Green, 2 minutes.
Well, I think that if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. All of these ideas are really good ideas. I think that having them encapsulated into a strategic plan, that gives us a way to effectively implement the kind of strategies that I'm hearing on this call. We also have to remember that the United States has a $21 trillion GDP, which is the largest in the world. It is the number one, it used to be the number one global competitiveness country. It is now number 10. And the reason it's number 10 is because the demographic shifts in this country, which threaten white supremacy, are impacting policy and they're impacting the economy. And so white America, which is stagnant in its population and in 20 years will be a minority, has to make a decision. Their wealth is at stake. Either we are going to become a multicultural, inclusive America, and they're going to empower Black and brown communities to become more economically productive, or it's going to be an economic drain. And so they have a decision to make. And we're saying we want to be more productive, but there's no strategy for us. There's no plans for us. All the plans are for white America. Now, that being said, we also can be making our own plans without waiting on white America to make a decision, but they have to make a decision. because multiculturalism, which they see as a threat to white America, and you can look up the Claremont Institute, they even have a campaign called Multiculturalism versus America, and that campaign has been going on for 3 years. They see us as a threat. But that is a segment of white America. There's another segment of white America that sees us as allies, that sees this country as a multicultural, inclusive society. And we have to embrace that and work with those folks. But we need a strategic plan. And that is the reason why at the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness, we want to build on that idea of creating a national inclusive competitiveness strategy for this nation that prioritizes, not includes, prioritizes the productivity of the most vulnerable populations to increase that productivity by 1% in one generation. That takes a lot of work.
Mike Green, economist, National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness, NIICUSA.org, everybody. NIICUSA.org. Pastor Thurston, Attorney Mark Fancher, Dwight McKee. Wow. Thank you so much today. Mike Green, your gift. God bless everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Mike Green, thank you for staying. I wanted these three gentlemen to hear you so they can go and talk about you wherever they go. They have tremendous reach. And people need to know who you are. Really, 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 really. Thank you so much for your word today.
Thank you, Santita. This was a pleasure.
Oh, well, you got to come back. When you going to come back?
I would love to.
You got to come back because really, I can say this very quickly. Part of the reason Reverend Jackson pushed African American is because I remember when he and my mother went to Liberia in 1971. Dwight, I think you remember that with the Talberts, and they established a dual citizenship for African Americans and Liberians, and his point has been we have got to reestablish our ties with Africa and build businesses in Africa. And he's been taking people to Africa for 50 years, just like Reverend Leon Sullivan. God, may he rest in peace. As I look at this bust of him in my dining room kitchen / studio, we've got to do that. Because, and that Malcolm X, there are people who, Marcus Garvey, there are people who've been trying to tell us this. We just need to listen and listen to them when they're alive, for heaven's sakes. Not after they died and you reminisce. Everybody, this world European colonial project is coming to a close. Europe and the United States are going to have to learn to live in cooperation, not in domination in the world. That's just the reality. And you need to get prepared for it. I think that's part of the challenge. We need to get ready, which is why we have got to come up with we have to investigate the plans that have already been put in place. Let's come up with a plan. Yes. Goodness gracious.
Absolutely.
But the final word, well, you know what, I know, Mike, you're running to a meeting. And I don't want to hold you up anymore, but I wanted you, Chaparral, are you there? This is one of our most brilliant callers. Dylan, is Chaparral there still? Chaparral? Dylan, are you still there? Okay. Well, you know what, Mike Green, what do you want to say? I was trying to make
say thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you. This was extraordinary. I appreciate you bringing me on. I appreciate the gentleman you had on with me. This was a really good, enlightening, and encouraging conversation.
Well, bless your heart. I want to thank you for being with us today because we really needed to hear from you today. And, and Chaparral is still there. So I'm going to let you go because I know you've got a big meeting, Mike Green. Yeah. But you've given us a lot to think about. And we are going to think about it. And more than that, we're going to act on it. Did Pastor Thurston leave already? I'm going to see him in a little bit. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Santita. I got to run.
Sending you much love and thank you. And you'll be back on really soon, like soon, soon.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Dwight McKee, Mark Fancher, what say you? And Dylan, are you there? Okay, keep on talking, Dwight.
Keep on talking about what?
No, I was going to ask you for a final thought.
Oh, I was waiting to hear Sapiro's question. Is she on?
I'm trying to.
She always got
I'm trying to find Dylan to see. Dylan, are you there? Can No worries. Can you bring Chaparral up? Are you in the front yet? It doesn't matter. I just need. Let me pull her up and. Okay. Oh, please. No, that's fine. But pull her up right now, please. Okay, thanks. Chaparral.
Yes, I'm here, Santita.
Okay, great. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great.
What's on your mind
Listen,
today?
I wanted to say that often I hear more so than more so than white people, black people saying that blacks don't need reparations. And I'm still of those people who believe I want my 40 acres and a mule with interest and taxes. I want it all. And I agree with everything that I've been listening to here today about the education system needed to be changed. We need to educate ourselves. We need to own our own banks. We need all of that. Well, first, we need access to capital and opportunity. I think that we definitely have to have that form as well. And I think that so many times we do not have the conversation because it's our own people who are shutting the premise of us getting reparations or us getting any type of compensation down. We had the highest person in office, which was the President of the United States, Barack Obama, tell the world that blacks don't deserve reparations. So if we have the president and the highest black leader in the world telling the world that we don't deserve it, that we don't need it, then tell me how are we supposed to get other people on board to actually support that idea?
Well, let me just put a little tweak that a bit. The highest black elected official, because traditionally our leaderships have not come from the White House; they've come from our house. And I think the White House is great, but our leader who we put there, he's actually supposed to be following us. And I think that's one of the critical mistakes we made. We were following him instead of making him follow us. Because I put you there. And I didn't put you there for decoration. I put you there to do something for me. I need you to deliver. Dwight?
But that's not what he said when Wall Street was going under. When Wall Street was going under, he said, print as much money as you need to have in order to bail them out. And so they raided and funded the economy and still got their bonuses in the end because it's really two standards. It's those who control the money supply and those who don't. And those who control the money supply, they pass the money around to each other. And whatever is left, they may decide to give some of that to us, which is how we got involved with this last stimulus situation. We got $1,400 and no minimum wage propositions. Is that whoever controls the money supply controls the economy. And until we understand that principle, we really kind of casting, bread to the wind because it's all they're going to do is when the time comes is manipulate the people and the economy by putting more money into the economy, inflation, or taking it out of the economy, deflation. But that's how they control that. What the first thing they did after World War II was put the world on the American dollar standard, which is how America controls the world. We need a currency that we all can agree on, even if it's an African currency that we can buy into. White boys begin to understand this really well, which is why they got these Bitcoins, is they're putting together alternative currencies so they're not dependent upon the Federal Reserve. for their transaction.
Yeah, Kennedy tried
That's
to
the
do that.
science we're facing.
That's right, because Kennedy tried to do that. He tried to take America off the Federal Reserve. President Kennedy tried to do that. You know, that's, I think, Dwight, you're making a profound point. Dylan, you said there's someone else on the phone. Dylan, are you there? Okay, let me see. He said this was someone who was in staunch disagreement with us, and I'm certainly unafraid of that. So you all, is Mark still there? Mark Fancher?
Oh, I'm
yes,
here.
Mark. I mean, Dylan, are you still there? No, if you could come back, is the caller still there, or did he drop off? Okay, no worries. No, I don't mind. I don't mind. You just got to let me determine that. Okay. 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 No, always just let me do that. But I still have them on the air right now. So not on the air, but on Facebook. Thanks so much. Okay, Mark Fancher, did you want to say something?
No, just I think that we really just have to get out of the mindset of thinking that we can get reparations by appealing to those with power, and trying to get them to have some sort of benevolent feelings toward us and some sense of justice and that kind of thing. That's just not going to happen. It's part of the one of the attributes of white privilege is that you're able to go through life not being inconvenienced or made uncomfortable about anything. And, to the extent that agitation for reparations makes people uncomfortable, then the response is one which is intended to pacify the agitators. It's something that's a token gesture that's intended to, shut people up, so that those with white privilege can go on being comfortable. And I think that if we are really serious about reparations, we really have to think in terms of doing what we have to do to get power of a kind that leaves them with no options, that puts them in the position of knowing that unless they do justice by us, then it's pretty much game over for them. And I think that there are global strategies for doing that, which have been around for a while. We've just never been organized into, a process that would allow us to actually carry those strategies out.
Well, amen to that.
And I'll have to say good day.
Well, I'm sending you much love. Thank you. How you feeling?
Likewise. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. No problems at all.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad to know that you're doing well. Pearl, do you have anything else you want to say before we go? You and Dwight?
No, Santita, I'm good. I just wanted to put that out there that, we have to believe that we deserve it in order for somebody else to try to help us to get it.
Well, Dwight,
or for us
hold
to collectively.
You're making a point. Dwight, why do you think some of us feel that we don't deserve it? Is it simply because we feel devalued, and we don't feel that we deserve, that we've made no contribution, meriting repayment, restoration?
Well, I think we are programmed into the Protestant method that we are hypnotized to believe that we operate at the same level that the rest of America does, and that if we by merit we become equal by merit and not by struggle. So the Bible deals with this concept called Jubilee, where every 50 years they forgive all of the debts and all of the sins and all of the bankruptcies and let everybody reset and start over again. It's a biblical principle that we would have a hard time implementing because we've been programmed to believe that, well, why shouldn't everybody forgive our debts? What makes us different? I think that we think that being treated, that compensation is a declaration of inferiority. And white people believe that they've done us a favor by bringing us over here and putting us in bondage and giving us opportunity to work for them. It's a very complicated issue.
Well, we're going to have to unpack all of this, Chaparral, so that we can get well. Um, because we deserve. We deserve. And America is not going to be right until America becomes just, and not just about other people. It has to be just, justice, your grandbaby's name. That is what people need. I mean, people deserve it. And until people get it, we're not going to we're not going to work all of this out here in the United States, really. A lot of people have been wronged, and these things must be made right. They must be. They must be. They must be. And I think that when we stop diminishing those who were enslaved and look at them as enslaved people, not merely as slaves, I think that will be part of the start. These are ancestors, our ancestors, who were people who were put into the state of slavery. They were put in bondage. We look at a slave as a degraded person. No, they're not degraded. Their situation is degrading. There's a difference. You've got to tease that out, everybody, and understand it. And know that we deserve. Absolutely. Look at the wealth gap. This is unbelievable. People come over here, and in a generation, they are able to get to the top of the society, and we've been here 4 generations and can get out from underneath the bottom. What does that mean? What does it mean when you see the indigenous people sitting on these reservations just rotting? What does that mean? Come on, you guys. Dwight?
And it starts with our infatuation for the queen and the king.
Oh my goodness.
It's that thing. It really is locked in our psychic. I listened to those conversations last week about the Prince and Harry and Queen Elizabeth, and it presumed that they had the right. They got the right to control the land, to own everything. And when you see her, you can't look her in the face and bow in front of her. And that somehow the royal bloodline has given them a superiority to the rest of the world. It really starts there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean,
people don't know that the queen, when they travel, they carry their own blood supply with them in case they need a transfusion. They can't use anybody else's blood but their own. I mean, this thing is sick at a no other level than we realize, but we have bought into it because we've been conditioned to curtsy, and that's why I say that Disney thing so insidious for us.
Mm-hmm.
That we believe that God has, God saved the queen. Everybody else go to hell, but God at least saved the queen.
Save her. Because she needs saving. She needs saving. Not you. She needs saving. The National Health Service in the United Kingdom will pay for your first 2 children to be born, but your third, no. Well, okay. The Prince William has 3 kids. I mean, come on, you guys. Our thinking has to change. Like I said about Meghan and Harry. Wow. Compelling interview, all of that. It was great. Not my issue. In as much as someone born with a title, no, I need a title and a deed to my own house. Okay. And the land underneath it. How about that? But all this other stuff, I mean, rehashing issues that we know already exist, colorism and all of that. Come on. No, no, no. If you can't talk about the system that they are trying to uphold, but they're trying to do it with a smile, like Princess Diana was a monarchist. She was not a Republican. That is to say, she did not support our form of government. She had a good time over in the United States, but she supported monarchy. Okay? I mean, it was a big deal for her to have her Royal Highness stripped from her name. HRH. I mean, what? Who does that? I mean, that's the thinking. We got to change our thinking, everybody. It's got to change. Dwight McKee, Chaparral, you all want to say anything before we go?
No, I'm good.
Well, you all are great.
Send me my check, Santita. I still want my check.
I don't know what you're asking me for.
I'm not going to let it go.
I don't know what you're asking me
The
for.
stimulus, ask Joe where my check is, Santita, because it still ain't showed up yet.
Well, you need more than a check. We need a plan. That's my only point with you. And you know that too, and you believe in that. We need a plan. Coming out of slavery, we were building towns, as Mike Green reminded us. We were building town. We were building. Okay? So that
Absolutely.
you'd be able to
And
get
everything was destroyed from us. And
absolutely by our
he
own
was on
government.
point, and they knew that we could overcome, and they wanted to continue to oppress, which is why they destroyed everything we do.
And they know that
Every
and they
time,
know that oppression begins in
every time.
and they know that oppression begins in the mind, which is why now we have a new group of leaders who are not from us. They look like us, but they're not from our house. They're from and in somebody else's house. Our leadership has always come from our house. And then we put leadership in the White House. Let's not get that twisted. The White House is supposed to follow us. We're not supposed to follow it. Them that are in it. Think about that, everybody. The people who work on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, and in Springfield, and in all of the state capitals all around the country, and at City Hall or in the town square, they work for you. No one elected in the United States of America, and no one elected anywhere is supposed to sit high and look low. They work for you. Vanderlei down in Brazil, they work for you. That's why you need to get Bolsonaro out and get Lula da Silva in. That's right. These people work for you, and these are your resources. They got Gaddafi out because he had, what is it, Dwight? What was it, the second or third largest um, uh, uh, accumulation of gold in the world? In the world. When he was pushed out, they seized the gold. He was on the verge of creating the Bank of Africa. They were going to have their own currency from the top of the continent to the bottom, from side to side, from north to south, east to west. They were going to become an independent continent, the richest continent on earth. Of course, they took him out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still shocking to me.
It wasn't
It's
shocking to
not
me.
shocking, but
He
it's just
predicted
like
it. He
it's just
predicted
like
Chaparral.
you
Chaparral.
knew that
He
he was gonna
predicted it.
die. You knew it,
Chaparral.
and they waited
Chaparral.
till Obama got in there and he killed
Chaparral.
him.
Chaparral. He predicted it
He
in
knew it.
2008.
That's why
No,
he was
no, he
handing
didn't
out.
just know it. He predicted it, and he was public when he saw where the politics were
Right when
going
they was gonna get ready to switch the currency. Right when they were getting ready to switch the currency.
and finish the bank. So get out of
And they
here.
say, Obama, go ahead and take him out for us. And he said, okay. Yeah, this is a mess.
No.
It's always, why they always got to send us to kill us? This is what I'm saying.
Well,
why they got to send us to kill us? If we look at history, it was us to kill us. We got to stop being bought too. We got to stop being a boss people.
Well,
but that's a whole nother tangent.
Well, we've made some bad decisions, and
I digress.
I know Dwight couldn't wait to hear you. When he heard you on there, I heard him jumping for joy. But there are things that we've got to do. You know, there are things that we've got to do. There are things that we've got to do. So, and we've got to get to work in our own communities. Chaparral, before we go, everybody who's in the Chicagoland area, Chaparral not only makes great food, she creates events for you. Chaparral, what are you doing in this new season where people are getting married, where people are now having proms, right? Well, you're not having proms. People are getting dressed up for prom, and you pass their homes, and they're having
full catering and event planning service. We do weddings, baby showers, birthday parties, prom send-offs, graduation send-offs, and we create a whole atmosphere for you so that way we can satisfy all your needs. We do fresh flowers, balloon arches, organic balloons, centerpieces, everything that you would need for any. We do a lot of prom send-offs, and so a lot of people hire us for food as well as also decorating their yards as well as also the inside of the homes. And we also do graduation drive-bys. So a lot of people are doing that. I'm actually going to give a drive-by for my daughter. Because of COVID, we have to adapt to the different situations so that way we can still stay in business and stay open. And so we've been very creative with our event planning opportunities, and we have those opportunities available. So give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546, and we're here to serve you.
And you know what? You'll come back on tomorrow morning and actually talk about it at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock, because I think people need to have options, and she does a fabulous job. I think I need to have you do my hallway so I can feel celebratory. You think I'm kidding?
Yes, I mean, outside is open. Outside is open. I am excited about this new season of celebration.
Well, look, I'm ready for it. I'm here for it because I am so over wearing a mask and all that today. I am just, I'm over it, everybody, over it. So, um, Dwight McKee, Chapearl, I'm going to let you go. I love you both. You all have been real gems. Dylan, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed the show today. I hope this gave you something to think about. So please, you're with us. What you say, Carol said, I'm with you. I'm with you, girl. I'm with you too. Oh my gosh. Effie, I mean, Carol, I'm so over this. I'm so ready just to go out and just walk without a mask. I mean, wow. But I'm not going to do it yet. So there you have it. But everybody, please take care. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow. What a blessing it has been to be with you today. Hope that we gave you something to think about with reparations, with restoration, with restoration. Um, what did Dwight say? You stole my purse. You're not doing me a favor, but I'm okay. I'll give this back to you. You stole this from me. Now make it right. Huh. And the indigenous people, not and first, you got to make it right with them. You got to make it right. You got to make it right. I love everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, like and share, and please, 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 please go to um, the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube, and please like and subscribe. Sending you much love, everybody. Love you. Love y'all. See ya. Bye bye.